Chapter 7, the first persecutions. Our Stephen is now in prison after talking to Saul and the people in the Sanhedrin, which became very furious and upset with his new teachings. He is now awaiting the sentencing, but Saul is not happy. As Emmanuel says at the first lines of the chapter, Saul was struck by Stephen's courage for having confronted his authority and fame. His impulsive character caused him to be seized with the idea of revenge. As amazing as it sounds, the prison of Stephen was not enough for Saul's ego, which was wounded very deeply and wanted greater revenge. How did he do it? How did he seize the persecution? Well, he talked to many important people and got authorization to persecute it. Even Caiaphas at the time made Saul the head of the persecutions. Emmanuel describes that Saul was obsessed with this idea and his mind was overexcited. Well, and he got much more upset when two other wealthy Hebrew men got to know of the teachings of Jesus, gave up on their wealth to their children, and joined the house of the way, the church of the way. Well, for him, he needed to take serious measure, cut those ill things at the root. On the other side, Peter and John thought that Stephen was right in whatever he did, but James thought that Stephen should have been more agreeable with the teachings of the Pharisees. This is very interesting to us. In this book, we'll find many lessons for Spiritist practitioners. Some like this. Among our very colleagues in our Spiritist centers, we may find those who agree with us and others who not certainly, which is very common. But still, what's most important is our clean and clear conscience about it. Well, then, the refocus for Peter and John, as they were disturbed by the prison of Stephen, was to reach out to the sufferers who were at the Church of the Way, which is also very important teaching for us. Whenever we're faced with problems in our lives, instead of going away from the world and retreating into these mono ideas, we should instead do the opposite. Reach out to the world, help those who are suffering, and with that, our problems little by little will be solved. Well, he also got to know Saul, our main character, that Gamaliel, his mentor, he was visiting the men of the way. The visit of Gamaliel was very, very interesting. Simon Peter invited Gamaliel to visit them, and in this visit, he was deeply touched. Why? First, because he found it very interesting that for the first time, people who were talking about spirituality were putting together efforts not only to elevate themselves, but to reach out to people who are suffering. Something that the Hebrews at the time, mostly the Pharisees, never thought about. He was in deep awe with everything that Simon Peter and his team were doing in the name of Jesus. He couldn't understand it much, the message of the Christ. But then he got to know more as one person whom he used to know, Simonius, who was there suffering from leper, talked with Gamaliel and shared his understanding from being a former Pharisee to now being someone who embraced the teachings of Christ. And he said, Gamaliel, if I were not suffering the way that I am, I wouldn't understand this message either. Because Jesus said he came for the sick. And that's why I now understand his message. So later on, we're going to talk about it when suffering makes us more permeable to life's truth. But that's another chapter. for now, we have the greatest lesson of letting go of our egos, something that was the primary cause of persecutions to the Christians at the time. In the Spirit's book, at the very beginning of the Prolegomena, we have many spirits saying that good spirits only aid those who serve God with humility and lack of self-interest. That was not the case for Saul at the time. He was deeply motivated by self-interest. He wanted to be the head of the Sanhedrin. He wanted fame. He wanted to be called the victorious. Well, as victor as he thought he was missing the boat, as we say nowadays. And he will find himself later. But not only that, we'll find that what it was missing here is something that nowadays we need to recall: tolerance. Gamaliel asked this very question: how can we be tolerant and at the same time be sure that we repress the ills in life? Well, tolerance, as the dictionary says, is the sympathy and indulgence for beliefs or practices differing from or conflicting with one's own. It's not that we allow it, it's just that we accept that people may have the right to think otherwise. So what would be the remedy for us? What would have been the remedy for Saul himself? Something that would probably prevent him from diving into this mistake. If he increased his levels of tolerance, how can we do it? By practicing this very remedy here, by intaking it. What is it? The charity molecule. We talk about charity oftentimes in Spiritism. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, we get to know that without charity there is no salvation. Salvation meaning peace of mind. That's what it means. How charitable are we becoming? And what is charity? Kardec asked this very question to the spirits. To the superior spirits, what did Jesus mean by the word charity? Well, charity encompasses three elements. 1, benevolence towards everyone, being good towards everyone, not only the ones whom we like, but everyone. Indulgence towards others' imperfections. Indulgence comes from the root indulgere. Indulgere means to sweeten other people's imperfections. Sooner or later, we understand that deep inside we're all a little childish, and in our immaturity, we make mistakes. And then the forgiveness for offenses. In these three features of charity, we find the remedy to counterbalance intolerance. So now, how about if you take a piece of paper and a pen and write down 3 lists. 1, benevolence for everyone. The other one, indulgence towards other people's imperfections. And the third one, forgiveness for offenses. And right below it, you write down at least 3 moments in your life in which you could make use of these tools. And as such, live a better life. How about if we try it now, reflect on it as we prepare to study the next chapter, chapter 8.